Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest because everyone's a special guest. They take time to join me on my show. I'm joined by Ms. Barbara Zito. We have actually never connected in person before. Actually, we're still not connected in person, but we've known each other, I think now going on 3 years, maybe 4, through professional associations and the like. If you noticed, I like to be a public speaker, but I like to sometimes dabble in blogs and writing. And Barbara was a great, actually, first step. I don't think I give her credit for me to find my voice writing-wise and give me the confidence to write, because she's given me an opportunity to share some of my articles and things I wanted to do with the association. But before we get started, Barbara, give a little bit of an explanation of who you are and a background.
Absolutely. Phil, well, thank you so much for having me. It feels like I'm getting on a call with an old friend, even though, to your point, we have actually never been in the same room. My name is Barbara Bellesi Zito. I've been a writer for most of my professional life, but as Phil mentioned, we've connected through higher education. I was a career advisor in my dual career path. And in the last few years of that, I found a way to infuse my writing in there too. And I was actually editing the blog for one of our mutual higher ed organizations. So this is a real thrill for me to be on your show. Thank you.
Well, this is great. No, so going back to the day, I looked, you went to Emerson, you're in the arts world, you're very creative. Talk about that background and creativity.
Sure. I have wanted to be a writer since I was in the second grade. Miss Barbara, one of my favorite teachers, who I am still in contact with, asked us, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And we had to actually cut out our picture and put it on like a magazine drawing or a magazine cutout of someone. And mine was my little head was on a woman sitting at a desk writing. And that is, I majored in English in college. I was always drawn more toward the creative fields. I was actually a theater major too, not for performance, but for production and writing. So what I did was, when I graduated Wagner College, I decided to go to Emerson College for my creative writing degree. And that was where I started working in admissions there. I worked for the graduate admissions office. So at the same time I launched my writing, my love of writing, I also launched a career in higher education and education in general. So really, since I left grad school, I was doing this double career as a writer and an educator. I have never been this starving artist type. So I wish I could tell you that I lived in an artistic studio and I worked at Starbucks and I wrote my novel. That is not the case. I actually have put my fiction off for much of my adult working life, which is something that I'm not thrilled to tell you to share with your listeners. But I kind of came back around to it in the best way possible. In early 2020, right before the pandemic, I actually, right at the very beginning of the pandemic, I finished a book that was based on a story that I had written during grad school, and I got a publishing contract for it. And I was absolutely thrilled. And there were some delays and things like that. But my book, Lucky Stiff, my debut novel, came out at the beginning of this year. So I've come full circle and now heading full steam ahead back into my writing career. I left higher ed actually back in August of 2021. I left my family at Rutgers University. I'm still very much in touch with them. But during the pandemic, my freelance writing really picked up. In addition to being a career advisor, I was a freelance writer in the home and lifestyle space. And I saw the opportunity and I kind of said, all right, this is time to, really a crossroads in my career. So now I've been working full time as a writer and haven't looked back.
I love it. And, one of the things that came into my mind was that love of writing,
Mhm.
especially from the second grade. Were you
Mhm.
like the kid that wrote like stories on a piece of notebook paper? Like, take us back. What was that? How were you expressing that love of writing as a kid?
I am still a shy kid. I'm an introvert by nature, although I do enjoy people. That's a myth about introverts. We don't hate others. We just don't get our energy from them. We get our
Mhm.
energy from ourselves. Yeah, I had that notebook. I still have that notebook actually with the Peanuts characters on it, and I was like writing little essays in it. I am not that writer who has 10 unfinished novels in my closet or in my drawer. I was actually always a perfectionist. I would, if I wrote something and I didn't like it, it ended up in the recycling pile or I deleted that. So what's both wonderful and also alarming to me is that the first book I published is the first book I completed.
Okay.
So no pressure, Barbara. You could actually do this writing thing, apparently. But to your point about what I was like, I'm a shy person. So what I love about writing is I have the opportunity to craft what I want to express to others. Um, in a way that makes more sense to me. I actually do public speaking. I've done that before and I can do that, but writing has always been my craft.
When you say public speaking and that's your thing, do you write out your whole speech then?
It's a good question. Have I done that? I think I've done it a couple times for some short speeches where I really
Mhm.
have to get to the point. I haven't done a speech in a while. I do like to go off of I'm a PowerPoint deck person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
So the things is, you know how going back to your career counselor hat, when you studied English,
Yeah.
did they always say like, okay, English, what you gonna do with that? And you had to explain it, or when you went into that degree, did you kind of know what you wanted to do with that degree?
It's interesting. I've always had multiple passions. Theater originally was one of my earlier passions. The production end of it. I liked writing just because I actually had the opportunity early on to get some
Unknown
publishing
caller.
credits. I wrote for some magazines, print magazines. I wrote for some new my college newspaper. So I loved seeing my name in print. I loved seeing people reacting to what I was writing. English was never one of those things because I always had a plan. I mean, maybe this is why I was a successful college, career counselor, because I always said it doesn't matter what you study as long as you have some sort of idea of the skills of how you're
Mhm.
going to apply those skills. I mean, I'm a firm believer that you can study anything, but as long as you start to get those administrative skills or those
Mhm.
public speaking skills or something like that, it really doesn't matter. But to your point, I actually did teach English and theater in my early part of the career. I had a wonderful opportunity to teach English at a small all girls school in Massachusetts, and that was very rewarding for me. What I loved about going back into higher education as a career counselor, I was still on the teaching end of students, but doing more one-on-one work. And quite frankly, I didn't have to grade papers because that's the part that I never loved about teaching was having to actually, I love talking about books. I loved teaching grammar. I loved teaching all that kind of stuff. But then you'd come home with a stack of essays and, yeah, and there went your weekends.
There it is. That seems like a bummer. So while you were in college, did you write? Did you like write for the school paper? What did you do in college with that English?
I did write for the school paper. I did take some journalism classes, but I was never we had a journalism minor at my alma mater. I never formally declared the minor, but I did learn. And I'm always very aware because I am now a journalist in the lifestyle field, but I
Mhm.
always refer to myself first and foremost as a writer because in my head journalism is breaking the news. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
I am more in what we call service journalism, which is a form of education in itself where I'm teaching people um, in the home improvement space. This is what you
Mhm.
should do for your home. And I interview experts. So while I am certainly tapping into um, my journalism ethics. I still have, for some reason, I still have a rough time calling myself a journalist because I think of politics or,
Yeah.
someone on the front lines breaking the news.
I was trying to think like maybe like a writer or contributor. That's a different way to think journalism.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, there's also in my field, we also float out the word content creator, which I know that normally is
the TikToks.
yes, exactly. Which I am not. I lurk on TikTok. I haven't really done any
Sure.
TikToks myself, but really anything digital these days is sometimes lumped under the heading as content. I'll admit I don't love that because I think that I mean I do a lot of really well researched pieces where I talk to like 10 different sources for
Mhm.
for an article. And then that's not to say that content can't be well crafted, but I know there are some people out there who are killing it with a 5-second video they
Mhm.
uploaded to TikTok. I'm not there yet.
So this is a random question. Me, I'll go in there. So
Yeah.
like, what are your thoughts on Chat GPT, right? Because you're writing, like, let's say you're writing really well crafted articles, but I can put it in that machine. Write me an article about the best practices for a new home. So how's the human experience going to keep up with that?
Oh my goodness. It's a really great question, Phil. And I've actually seen it from both ends. So let me tell you the first part. As a journalist, as a freelance journalist, I work with about 10 different publications. All 10 editors have sent emails either with new contracts attached to them or an addendum to the contract saying, if you use ChatGPT, we will know you're fired, basically, like in no
Oh.
uncertain terms. So to that aspect, I'm like, yes, the bots are coming for my job. I'm very worried. On the flip side, I listen to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts out there, and
Mm-hmm.
they unfortunately are promoting this. And I'm really at a crossroads because I love technology. I see some of the benefits of this, just not for me right now. And I think that for content creators, it's a good way of jogging their brains into thinking of all the things that
Mm-hmm.
people are looking for. So I will say that is the benefit of it. It's sort of like tapping into the search engine machine that's out there to see what people are thinking about. However, like all things technology and social media, I think those superpowers are going to be used for evil, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think you're going to see a lot of plagiarism, especially for students, unfortunately. I think you're going to see a lot of content creation that, frankly, seems like it's been written by a robot. So, again, love the idea that there are more ways to get to the bottom of what readers want to read, but I don't know if there's just no mixing of it right now. So I do not have an account with that because I would be fired by all of my
I love
colleagues.
it. I mean, I was just thinking about that, like pros
Yeah,
and cons. People use it, maybe gives
yeah,
you a rubric, but you still add like storytelling. Like
yeah, yeah.
you can add a personalized story that can,
Hmm.
like, you can use it to do like spit out like bullet points, and then you can say, okay, but here's a very personalized human
Yeah.
story to go with that example. So I don't know. It can be pros and cons to both.
To be fair, that is the way that the last podcast of this entrepreneur who I said, like, I really admire them and I admire their principles. That is how it was presented during that use. I just hope that people do use it that way. So if they use it the way you suggested, this could be a good tool. But like I said, in my business right now, we've had to agree not to use it.
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about, as you're sharing and you're helping elevate voices is like, um, the blogs, right? You're blogging.
Yep.
That's how you stayed in tune. Can you talk about that parallel life, like get into the freelance? Like, how did
Mhm.
it come about? Like, share some of that examples because I know some people like to explore that freelance world and freelance
Sure.
writing world.
Sure. I had a side hustle before we had the name side hustle. I've been freelancing since '04. So I was always attached to the internet in some capacity. I will
Mm-hmm.
say that nearly 20 years later, it has been is opened up a wealth of opportunity for me as a freelance journalist with whom I can write for. Um, how easy it is for me to reach out to editors, how easy it's been for editors to reach out to me. One of my favorite clients, who I write for, I just celebrated my second anniversary writing for them. They reached out to me on Twitter, so I am a huge fan of the internet as far as freelance goes. I think that it's not for everybody. Okay, I know a
Mhm.
lot of people. The way I describe it to people is, are you ready to have homework for the rest of your life?
Mhm.
Especially me as a writer, because I have deadlines, but I truly feel like unless I have a deadline, the work is never done. Something can always be tweaked, something can always be rewritten or added to, or something can, to make it better. Um, I do like to work. I mean, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be doing it. I enjoy the added income, and I had my ducks in a row. For a while, it was like, could I do this full time? And I swore to myself I would never make the jump until I knew it would be a good decision for myself. My husband's been very supportive of me in this time, and it just helped. It was really nice to make the transition. And now that I'm fully focused on writing, it's not part time; it's full time. But the freelance aspect is still there because I have the opportunity to either take on more work as I see fit, or if I want vacation time, I'll just hold off on things.
So, blogging, right?
Yeah.
Have you've done blogging? Can you
Hmm.
talk about like some tips? Because I have a student, right? And I
Yep.
think she actually got some jobs off of this.
Hmm.
Her name is Emma. Um, where I was like, don't wait, create. I know
Hmm.
it's laborious. You're doing a blog for yourself just to
Yep.
keep practicing. But then I think a roundabout way, she got picked up to do social media. So can you
That's
talk about
right.
some blogging? Like, is blogging still a thing? Is that still a wave? I remember in the early 90s or mid 2000s, that was a bigger thing, blogging. Is it still relevant using your own WordPress? Like, talk to a student that says, I want to write. Would you still encourage them to do that on the side just to keep their content up?
Sure. Yes, I would always say it's always better to write and create. Um, don't stop doing that. uh you're building your portfolio basically, and it's never been easier to build a portfolio than
Mhm.
it is now. But it's interesting that you say blogging, because yes, it almost seems like an antiquated term, because now it seems like every website has some type of blog aspect to it. I mean, look at magazines used to be very thick with advertising. Now they started getting short. They started getting a lot thinner because there's not so much advertising. And now those magazines, if they did not fall by the wayside, they've gone completely digital. So if you go to your newsstand, it has changed over the years. So, and everything's kind of been shifted. So do I call that blogging? Sure, you could call that. However, there are various things, like Twitter is a microblog. We don't really call it that anymore, but it really
Yeah.
is, because you're sharing your thoughts in bite-sized nuggets. Substack is one of those platforms where you can easily get something up and running in like a newsletter form or something. So I would suggest, if they can, try to find a focus. Okay. And it could be a really large focus. I mean, if someone wanted to just write about the college experience, I'm sure there's a million different topics. But if you want to be something that's more unique to yourself, then there are ways of kind of narrowing it down. But I still think it's unique. Can you link to that? Absolutely. People are actually surprised by that. When I used to advise students, I said, how many people do you have on your Instagram? Okay. Start writing better posts. It's like, don't even, yes, of course, it's very image oriented, but start really paying attention to how you write those posts. And those are things that you can always share with an employer, or they can reach out to you and say, hey, we'd like you to do this for our brand or our company.
Well, that's awesome. Awesome. So what about how would you get feedback or know it's hit, like not say hitting? How you know if you're on an upward trajectory with this consistent content? How do you know if you're doing well, or what would be some ways to know that, like, okay, I'm on the right track? Am I getting,
Hmm.
should I look at the views? Should I
Hmm.
just feel good about it? I don't know. Should I have like a mentor read it and say, wow, your writing's getting better? How would you encourage someone to analyze their growth, or getting better at this blogging world or writing, period. And when I say getting better at writing when you're not in class anymore, you're not in school anymore. How do you analyze that growth?
It's really great. And I'm going to point to the word that you just said. It's growth. Okay. If you are starting to see more followers on whatever platform you are, that would be something that's really good. That will be one way, but it's not the only way of showing your success. I actually have surprised myself, not with my own posts, which is something that I'm still working on. I've commented on other people's sites. Always nice. I'm one of those people, like if I say, like, I think I compliment people on their page. I'm not a troll. I've never done that. I've never said anything badly on someone else's, which I think is important. I have gotten comments go viral on other people where they thought I said something funny. Like the other day, I got an alert from 650 people liked this comment that I said, why can't I do that on my own channel? So it really is hit or miss. I mean, I have done posts where I've thrown something up on Instagram and like, I'm saying this is the one that's going to go viral. Like I hear nothing. I hear crickets. And then there are times when I'll just post something really silly and I don't know, did I have the right hashtag? Did I just hit the right algorithm? Did everyone who's on their way to work happen to pick up their phone at the same time and look at this? I don't know. So to your point, it's consistent content. Okay. If you're going to post something once a week on Instagram, don't expect much traction. I'm not saying you should go the opposite way and start posting every hour on the hour. That's going to, that might get you something at the beginning, but it's not going to be something you can uphold, or you probably even want to. So I think it's a combination of, yes, you can change your account to like the creator or even like the business account, so you can see the analytics from behind. You can see the insights. You can see how many impressions, how many people saw it. That would be helpful. But then sometimes you get too much into the weeds of the analytics and the numbers, and then you keep looking at your content as like, well, how many people am I going to get? If you're enjoying what you're posting, it's kind of like the field of dreams philosophy. If you build it, they will come. If you post it, they will comment eventually, and then you can see. Yeah.
Build an audience, basically. I think about that with this podcast. It's been 6 years, 7 years. And I don't know, I just kind of focused on just doing it more and more and more and not worried about the numbers as much. And now it's something I do, but at the same time, I would periodically check in, I guess you would say, right? Periodically look at numbers, periodically, but I wasn't number obsessed, right? So it's half an and, right? It's a both and, right? Like make sure I am continuously growing my audience, but also make sure I don't get lost in the sauce. And that's the only thing I think about. So that parallel planning. So I think that kind of applicable.
Right.
Go ahead. I think you had something.
No, I was just saying, and it seems like you enjoy what you're doing. And that's something that I would say, like, if you ever decide, this is not fun anymore, you're going to have to figure out either a way to make it fun again, or, or just keep going. So I'm not saying every day is going to be, a bowl, a barrel of laughs, but if you're not having fun most of the time doing what you're doing, then it's time to kind of take stock of what's happening.
I love it. So one of the things I think about is your support of other people. Talk about how we met, that Eastern Ace blog, and how that was experienced, and how I'll speak transparently for myself. It gave people confidence and allowed them to use their own voice and we actually went back and forth for a few drafts. What you think about this? And you gave me some feedback, but talk about that experience, supporting others.
It was great. I loved the organizations. This is I'll name drop this one. This was the Eastern Association of Colleges and Employers that Philip and I met through, and it was a great opportunity to. Well, first of all, I love higher ed people. This is one of the things that was so hard for me when I left Rutgers was to leave these wonderful people, and I think we do really good work in career development in universities. So I had this opportunity to run the blog with a friend of mine at Northeastern at the time, Ethan, and then it kind of fell to me just because of the way things gone. And I even continued with it a little bit. I finished out my term after I had left Rutgers just because it was the easiest thing for me to do. So what I liked about it was I reached out to people who had there was this platform in place that allowed people who maybe didn't feel they had enough content to share at a conference, or they just didn't have the opportunity, or they wanted to expand on something that they had already taught or already knew that was working well for them with their students. So it really was a win-win. And yeah, so I got to talk to, and Phil, what I liked about working with you is you would ask questions, like I was not here to be like a harsh editor, like, no, I don't think we should include this. This was kind of like your blog post is going up on the blog, but let me, if you're asking me how I can help you make it better or what I think of it, sure, I'm going to give you some feedback. And you did some really great posts, and I'm so happy that, you got more confident in that with your writing. That's a bonus for me. That was something that I did not intend to happen or was even aware could happen for that role.
No, I mean, honestly, that's always been my MO. I am a growth-minded person, but I'm also okay. Like, people give me your honest feedback, and don't spare feelings. And like I said, her feedback was not mean, but just don't spare feelings. And that's the only way I'm going to learn. So people say, okay, tell a story a little bit this way or that, and I've learned that if you come at it from like a genuine care to get better, and you're open to it, and you're just saying, okay, I'll listen to people that have more of an expertise. I knew that you wrote, then I'm only gonna get better that way. So I was okay with doing it. And so I don't know. I would like to say I give you credit because you gave it a supportive environment. Like, from that, I kept on doing it more and more.
That's great.
So it could have been an opportunity where someone shot me down. That could have been the first. That could have been a door closer, because oh, I'm not going to do it no more. But it gave me juice. It gave me confidence. So I do it way more. What are the best stories? For the higher ed people, like, what are some good stories? Like, how would you if you were doing like a writing workshop for like a higher ed person, there's a room full of higher ed professionals, not writers, and you're doing like how to tell your story in in the higher ed world. What would be some ways that you would tell them, like, share good stories or something? I don't know. What would you like? You had a workshop. Maybe we're doing it right now. Storytelling in higher ed. What would you do to tell them?
I think the thing that so many people are drawn to writing, first of all. And I've told people, oh, you've written a book? I have an idea for a book. And then all of a sudden they tell me about the story that they've been meaning to write. So I said, I think you should write this. The thing about storytelling is some of us are better at it than others. I'm actually still learning how to tell better stories. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about writing is it's not like, I'm hoping I'm always going to grow as a writer. And I think that I could do that through helping other people learn to write too. So to your question about people telling stories in higher ed, I think everyone has a story, has their own unique story as far as what brought them to college, what encourages them, what discourages them, what obstacles they've had in the past, what challenges they've overcome, and also what they still want to do in the future. So I think there's a lot to tell. And I also think that stories at this point don't have an end. Obviously we don't have an ending yet because our stories are still going. But I just think that it depends on how you want to tell your story. Does your story have tragedy in it? Does your story have some trauma in it? How open are you with sharing ideas? And also just the writing of it. I mean, I'm not going to lie, writing is difficult. There are times when I'm in the flow and I say, "Ooh, this is easy. This is great." And then there are other times that I struggle to write a sentence. So one of the wonderful things I think about language is, even though I was a teacher of grammar at one point, I was teaching people how to properly use, parts of speech. I was one of the first people who said, "Oh, we're we're sharing our pronouns, we're getting looser with pronouns, we're getting looser with fantastic. The beauty of language is that it changes, it morphs along with society. I mean, you see every year we've got new words added to the dictionary. I think it's a wonderful thing. I know people are still kind of very strict, like, well, what about grammar? What about the rules of grammar? Yes, you should learn how to write properly, but then your voice gets in there and then it becomes more authentic.
I love it. I love it. So it flows, it changes. Maybe we're talking about the cultural competence, like how important is it, to understand, different voices have different, I don't know. I'm thinking like, growing up and being so strict that we were only supposed to say it this way. And
Yep.
then you realize that like, as a Black male, I've been code switching, like this is how I talk, so how do we not mute the voices and encourage that diversity in voices, but also, like you said, I don't know, be effective?
It's so interesting because I'm still on LinkedIn, even though I'm not actively searching for jobs right now. I'm always networking with new experts and trying to find people that I can, call on for articles. So many of them reach out to me, and it's not "Dear Barbara" or "Hello Barbara" or "Hi." It's "Hey, hey Barbara," and I remember as a kid, the older people in my family saying "Hay is for horses" or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just so funny to me because I'm an easygoing person. I like to be more casual than anything, but that's not how you and I were taught, Phil, right? We were always told, don't say hey to someone. So I just think it's great. I think it's fine. I think it's morphing. I don't think it's sloppy. I just think it's like a casual thing, and casual is not a terrible thing. I think that you have to evolve, and if you're not evolving yourself, then if it's not hurting anybody, this is the thing, like I'm not being physically hurt by someone calling, saying hey to me in an email. So
I guess so. I guess it's just know your lane, know your audience.
I guess,
I
yeah.
guess slow down. Always think about, I guess, empathy. Like think about who you're talking to, and then
Hmm.
but it's like weird. Like you have to always like feel like you're wearing two hats in regards
Hmm.
to language and
Hmm.
words, and it's just like so multifaceted language, right? And storytelling. Like I could tell a story multiple different ways based on an audience, right? And so
Hmm.
I think that's
Hmm.
just having that, I think, awareness of yourself, but also awareness of the rooms that you're talking to.
Exactly. It goes back to the idea of read the room.
Mm-hmm.
I like to infuse humor in a lot of what
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Yeah.
I have done things in a group presentation where I've said something funny and it fell flat. I'm like, okay, strike that. Thank goodness I'm not a stand-up comedian because I would be heckled right now. So I think that humor is sometimes hard because obviously you don't want to offend anyone, but even the most innocuous things, like maybe some people are tired. Students are tired a lot of the time. They've been up all night. Like they're just not ready for your humor. I
Yes.
also think that but here's the thing. I think that casual language or language that is not like at the most proper level, I think people see that as a sign of disrespect. I don't see that as a sign of
Yeah.
disrespect.
Exactly.
That's not that, you're not going to disrespect me because you said hey. So,
I totally get that too. I think it's reading the room. I think
mhm,
understanding, like, if I'm talking to a bunch of colonels, I guess deference and respect and the way that you say sir and all that is different in different lanes.
mhm,
And then, like,
mhm,
at one place. So I think about that now too. Like, in this lane, is that respectful? In this lane, is it not? And just kind of adjust accordingly. And
mhm,
that's just being real. And then, like, if you do take a L and it's quote unquote not deemed respectful in that space,
mhm,
just being owning up to it and saying, apologizing and adjust. Like
mhm.
that's all you can do, right? Like if you tell a joke that goes flat, you're like, oh, my bad, not using that
Yep,
one again, not using that one
absolutely.
again,
Mhm.
and then you just don't use it again or whatever.
Exactly, and it's noted, and I mean, of course, the introvert that I am probably remembers that bad joke that I told 10 years ago and, wakes me up in the middle of the night sometimes, but I'm I've moved on, sort of.
So we can keep on going, but I want to respect your time. So we're gonna go to the part of the show called Shot for Shot. You get
Mm.
to ask any random question. I ask a random question. You go first. I go first.
Oh my goodness. I go first. Anything?
No, you can go first. I go first. Which one?
Okay. You ask me first so I can, yeah.
All right. So, what can I do to get your vote as the unofficial mayor of Mason?
You want to buy me a house that I can move to your area and I'll vote for you?
Oh, dang. You go right to the pockets.
I do.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I write about real estate, so that's it. No, you would have my vote in, I believe, any election, unless I was running against you. Then you can't have my vote. So how about that?
Okay. Okay. And in all seriousness, then this
Yes.
is what I will joke it now, not the unofficial mayor Mason. What do you look for in a leader? Like if I was saying, I could, I want to be, I'm gonna be your supervisor. I'm gonna be your leader. What would you say to me? Like, what can I do as a leader to have your trust? What do you look for in a leader?
I look for someone who is a good listener. Okay. A leader is supposed to lead. A leader has their own ideas of how something should move forward in a positive way. But I also think they need buy in from the people who are going to be supporting them. And the best leaders, usually the best bosses I have had, are those who say, here's our end goal. Okay. I'm going to be here to help guide you toward that, but I'm not going to get in the way of the things you do well. Okay. I'm not going to prevent you from, but if there are things that you can improve upon or have not gotten the opportunity to do yet, I'm going to be here to show you how to do it or to teach you how to do it. So I think it's someone who, a leader, they know who they're leading. How about that? They're not leading without a firm understanding of the people who are going to help them on to success.
Excellent. I love it. So here's my question for you.
Okay.
I believe you're in the Boston area,
New York. I
listen,
used to be in the
no,
Boston area. I'm
you
in New
used
York
to
now.
be. I'm ready, but you was an enemy. You was in enemy territory.
Yes, I was.
Talk about your experience being a Yankees fan in enemy territory.
Funny story. Okay. I'm a Yankees fan by marriage now. I
Okay.
grew up a Mets fan. So when
Mm,
I moved to Boston, of course, I moved to Boston. I was there from 99 to '08. So I was there for when they broke the curse. Okay.
mm-hmm.
So 99 to '04, I literally was told by Boston friends, oh, you're a Mets fan, you're fine. And I
Okay.
was like, but we beat you in the World Series. Like, I truly did not understand the rivalry until I moved to Boston. Because being in New York, we have, if you're a sports fan, New York is awesome, but you have options when it
Yeah.
comes to
Yeah.
sports. Your Yankees, your Mets, your this, you're that. When you're in Boston, it's if and you like baseball, it's obviously you're going for the Red Sox. And the Red Sox have the power of not only the Boston fans, but all of New England.
Yep.
Okay. So like you have 6 states always cheering you on any given night. So yes, to your point, I switched over. I was a Red Sox fan, a very big Red Sox fan when I was there. And then I moved back home and I actually took a break from baseball for a
Yeah.
while and just sports in general. And then I married a Yankee fan, and this is gonna sound terrible, but I like winning.
There you
And
go. Fair.
it's fun. It's
Yeah, it is.
fun.
Yeah.
But we're having a little bit of a rough season right now. So
Well, I'm stuck with the DMV sports, so I have no choice. They all suck, and they're
aw.
not good. So that was great. Now we're at the, definitely as we land the plane in this episode, definitely want to use this opportunity for you to share. And so this is the part called shout outs and plugs. Please, shout out, show love to anyone you want to show love to. And then plugs. These are ways that the listeners can get engaged with you and the things that you're working on that you want them to be aware of. So go ahead.
I'm going to give myself a plug first, but only because, and I'll tell you why, because the shout outs will come immediately after that. You can find me on social media at Barb the Writer. I'm pretty much at Barb the Writer on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My book, Lucky Stiff, is out on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookshop.org. So it's out there on the end. And the reason I say follow me on social media is because you will see the people that I want to give the shout outs to. I am friends with so many wonderful writers and friends who have become friends. I mean, I'm very blessed to know some people who are on my shelf, and now I can count them as friends and mentors. One in particular, Camille Pagan, who is an Amazon bestseller. She is fabulous, and she's become a huge mentor for me. Let's see, my family, my husband and my mother are my two tied for number one fans. Let's see. I follow a lot of funny people on Instagram because I think, if we can't laugh at social media, it's some what are we doing on there? We can't take ourselves too seriously. And yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much, Barb. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for, as I said, giving me a voice in my writing and giving me a jump start. So I give you a lot of shout out to that. Definitely going to keep on sharing things with you so you can give you some feedback. Please support her book. Please support her social media channels and connect. She is a wonderful person. So Positive Filter listeners, if you like this episode, please share it with a family member or friend. Like I said, all episodes are dedicated to the memory of my late father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. And please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund for all the work that he did in regards to fighting food insecurity during his career. And so just thank you so much for listening, subscribing, liking, reviewing, all the things. Please continue to support the podcast, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.